Good morning and welcome you all to the CBC online classes. Today I'm going to discuss the second part of Class 8 History Chapter 1. In the first part, we discussed about the meaning of history and who were the person behind the classification of history and what criteria used by this person to classify history and who were the person remembered by us for the construction of Indian map and Indian history. British historians divided Indian history based on the ruling period of governor generals. And that detail we studied in the first part. In 1817, a Scottish economist and political philosopher named James Mill published a book, History of British India. The name of the book, published by James Mill, is History of British India. In this book, he clearly explained the history, classification of the history of India. According to this classification, Indian history is divided into three periods. One Hindu, the second is Muslim, and the third is British. That means the period of Hindu rulers, the second period is a period of Muslim rulers, and the third, the period of British East India Company, English East India Company. This was the classification made by James Mill. Actually, this was one of the most convenient and most accepted classification of Indian history. It was made by James Mill. Prior to British rule, India was ruled by Hindu rulers and Muslim rulers. And during this period, that is, the ruling periods of Hindu rulers and Muslim rulers, India strongly believed in caste system. The evils of caste systems, multiple religions, superstitions, etc. And when we come to the period of British rule, James Mill opined that British rule could civilize India and teach them manners, arts, and laws. Out of these three different systems of rule, Hindu ruling period, Muslim ruling period, and British ruling period, the British ruling period, it was a promising one because the British ruling period could only civilize India and they could only develop India. India attained a development and India attained a progress during the period of British rule. Another classification of Indian history is the classification of history based on dates. That is from 4000 BC to AD 500. That historical period is known as ancient history, and from AD 500 to AD 1500, that period is known as medieval history, and from AD 1500 to the present 2020, this period is known as modern history. So three classification we made based on the date: ancient history, medieval history, and modern history. The classification of history into ancient, medieval, and modern history we made based on the dates. That means we took AD and BC. So there may be a doubt regarding the classification of AD and BC. The terms Anno Domini, that is AD, and before Christ, BC, are used to label or number years in the Julian and Gregorian calendars. The term Anno Domini AD is medieval Latin and means in the year of Lord. That means in the year of the Jesus Christ. That means after the birth of Jesus Christ. The term before Christ BC, an epoch used in dating years prior to the estimated birth of Jesus Christ. That means these BC is the dates before Jesus Christ. So, definitely, in a shorter version, we can identify this difference between AD and BC. BC before the birth of Jesus Christ and AD after the birth of Jesus Christ. The history of India under British rule, that is, the history of British India, comes under the modern historical period. Actually, the modern historical period is related to growth of all the forces of modernism. But under the British rule, people were not getting modernized. Therefore, the name changed it to colonial period. We didn't use the term modernization and modern historical period. We use the term colonial period. See what do you mean by the colonization? When the subjugation of one country by another leads to political, economic, social, and cultural changes, this term and this process is known as colonization. So, India became a colony under the rule of Britain, and it was a period of colonial period, and it was not a period of modern history. Always we have a doubt, confusion regarding the evidences of historical events. Which are the sources of history? And which are the evidences? And who were the rulers? And who were the Muslim rulers? And who were the governor generals of India? The sources that historians use in writing about last 250 years on history includes first one, the official records of the British administration. For British, the act of writing was crucial. So every plan, policy, agreement was in writing. This led to administrative culture of memos, noting, and reports. British kept all the documents preserved in the record room, which was attached to all administrative institutions. Moreover, these documents were written by calligraphists who specialized in the art of beautiful writing. So, when we study the history of British India, that is from 1757 to 1947, that is a ruling period of the British East India Company, and from 1600, British East India Company came to India, they established English East India Company, and from 1600 to 1947, all historical events were preserved by the British officials in a written form. Because it was a habit of British officials to record all administrative facts, administrative elements, events, and everything in a written form. So, getting the details of British administration and British ruling period, it was not a difficult job because everything was in a written form. Look at this picture. It is National Archives of India. It's a record room where all the documents and letters from government and various administrators have been arranged as per dates from 18th century and are preserved in good conditions. See, from this, we can easily come to a conclusion that from 18th century up to the 21st century, all documents and everything are preserved. The data regarding all historical events will be available from this institution as per dates. You mentioned the first source of writing history is official records of British administration. The second source of writing history is conducting survey. Conducting survey, it was common under British rule. The British believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administered. By the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. For example, forest survey to identify the area under forest, zoological survey. So many surveys they conducted. The survey, what we are following to enumerate the number of persons in our country, that is census. And this census actually it's a form of survey, and that census we are following right now also we copied from the method adopted by the British under their rule. So this conducting survey, it was an effective method of identifying historical events, and now also the survey is one of the best method to identify and publish many administrative facts. There are many limitations of these official records when we take it as a source of writing history. The first one, records do not tell what other people in the country felt. Second one, only diaries of people, travelers, and autobiographies of important personalities can tell about literate people. Third one, no record of the history is available for the tribals, peasants, workers, or the poor. That means the history, what we are studying right now, is not a complete record of historical events. There are many unknown facts yet to be discovered and yet to be studied. More detailed study of history we will study in the chapters that coming after this and in ninth and 10th classes. This is the second part of chapter 1 history class 8. The main points, question and answers, and the previous questions we will study in the next video. Thank you all.